The following presentation is brought to you by Amazing Discoveries. To see this entire video, please contact amazingdiscoveries.org.
This afternoon we're going to talk about the story of Jesus. It's actually a very beautiful story and quite a sad story in many senses as well. This is a little map of where Jesus spent most of his life. He spent some time down in Egypt as a little boy, as a baby. And most of the stories about Jesus revolve around this area here of cities like Chorazim, Capernaum, Cana, Bethsaida, all of these, Nazareth, that's the area where most of his teaching took place. And as we go down over here, of course, you come to Bethlehem down there and Jerusalem, and this is the great Salt Sea up there, the Sea of Galilee. The story of Jesus is a story of someone who is a shepherd, someone who leads his people. Now, in my country, when I look at a shepherd, it doesn't make much sense because a shepherd in my country drives sheep ahead of him. And they have dogs to herd the sheep, to get them through a particular gate, and the dogs run and they take them this side and they get to them on that side and they funnel them, as it were, and the sheep are actually a little bit terrified during this whole process. And so the idea of a shepherd leading his sheep is something pretty strange. But this is a typical Middle Eastern picture where shepherds are totally different, where the shepherd leads and the sheep follow. You can see all these sheep are facing the shepherd, which is totally different to what is the case in other countries. Here's a typical shepherd scene in the Middle East, where you have your shepherd and his little flock of sheep around him. And again, they're all facing him. Isn't that cute? I like that. And this man had such a nice rugged face, I had to photograph him. Here we took a little video of a typical shepherd scene. Again, the sheep are there, the shepherd's over there, and they trust their shepherd. And let's watch this. He walks, the sheep walk. They don't let him get away. They're very attached to their shepherd. That's a beautiful picture of how Jesus depicts himself as a shepherd. He leads out, and we follow. The story of Jesus is the most amazing story that has ever transpired in the universe. And everywhere, unfortunately everywhere, where you go in the Middle East, they will have made a holy site out of all these places. And people believe that there is some sanctity in going to these holy sites. It's nice to be there and it's nice to see them, but there is no sanctity in a place. You can meet Jesus as effectively in your little room as you can over here. Of course, if you want to expand your knowledge and see what it was like in those areas, then that's a different story. But to go there to get a special grace, that is a deception. So this is apparently the cave where the shepherds were that evening, and you can see they have a star there on the floor, as they were informed of the birth of Jesus. And in this cave, they have put down a church with the reliefs on the sides of the shepherd boys in the environment when the angel came to tell them that Jesus had been born in Bethlehem. They must have been out in a field like this, so the time of year when this happened could not have been the 25th of December, which happens to be the birthday of all the pagan main deities like Osiris and Zeus and all of them, because the shepherds were out in the field. That means it must have been in a temperate time and not in the middle of winter as the 25th of December would depict. This over here is the field of Ruth. That's a nice story, the story of Ruth the Moabitess, which is another story in the Bible which tells us that God does not reject nations. Even though Moab was an apostate nation, someone out of Moab accepted Jesus as their personal savior. They didn't know him as such because he wasn't born yet, but they believed that the God of the Israelites was the true God and was to be their God as well. This is the city of Bethlehem where Jesus was born, and some beautiful sights there. Who's been there? Ah, great, some beautiful sights. The people there are magnificent to watch. It's like being transported back into the Middle Ages, in a sense. And this old man over here, he's very impressive. There are lots of these rugged faces around, and as you walk these streets, it's really fascinating. I was there quite a few times. It's quite a dangerous area to be around in. In fact, in one instance, we were stoned and managed to survive that one. In other instances, we were the only ones that were traveling backwards and forwards between the Israeli side and the Lebanese side. Fascinating stories. The Israelis come and they put up a fence. They just put it up. And everybody this side stays that side, everybody that side stays that side. But they happened to put this fence right through this man's property. And this was our tour guide. And so he was the only tour guide who had a license to be on both sides. That was quite interesting. So we were the only ones who were allowed onto both sides. Everybody else had to stay on their side. I think that's divine providence. I think the Lord helped us there. And it was terrific because you could go into places nobody could go because everything was sealed off. We had the place to ourselves. I've been to Bethlehem and other places when you cannot move for all the tourists. I mean, there are hundreds of tourists in these churches. You stand in queues forever. We had the church all to ourselves, totally empty. We could go to all these sites. It was marvelous. And the tour guides, they were desperate for money. So they would sneak you into places you'd never normally go to. That was very nice. So something good can come out of something bad. Typical scenes of the marketplace. This is a butcher. If you would like to purchase your meat, there it hangs. And there's a tremendous buzz around as you go and purchase your meat. So I'm not so sure whether that's a good idea. This man over here tried to sell me this chicken, and he was adamant that I had to buy this chicken. It was on the hoof. It was alive. And he wouldn't let me go. I told him I'm not interested in buying his chicken, but he wouldn't let me go. So he haggled with me, and he wouldn't let me. He ran after me. He insisted I buy that chicken. Eventually, it drove me nuts. So I said, okay, I'll bargain with him for his chicken. And so I bargained him down and down and down and down and down and down for his chicken until he got angry with me, which was very good. And I bargained more and I bargained more, and eventually he got angry and he says, there, you can have it for nothing. And I told him I'm a vegetarian. That was the look on his face. Total incredulity. He didn't believe that something like this was possible. But then he laughed afterwards, and we made good friends. This is a typical bakery there. And I must say, it doesn't look too hot, does it? No, you know. Well, anyway, bread is bread and baked in the oven. It's probably fine. And women weren't allowed in here because that's not fit for a woman, a place like that where you bake bread. Try and tell that to Blaženka at the back there. I don't think she would agree. And nevertheless, this is the famous church of the Nativity where Jesus was born, or so they say. We never know whether these holy sites are these sites. Some of them probably are pretty accurate. and that this could represent the place where Jesus was born. And these, of course, these sites were chosen very early on in the history, and this particular one by Constantine's mother, and she found that this was the site, and so they built this church, which was, of course, a Byzantine church, which means it was Orthodox. And so there's been a tremendous war in this area between the Orthodox and the Catholics who claim these sites for themselves. This war was not resolved until the ecumenical movement came along, and so this church now is shared by the Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church, and they alternate the masses in there. Now, when you come into this place, you have to enter a little door that's very low, so you have to bend down, and that is to show a sign of respect and humility, so you have to crawl through it, as it were. And as you see, the church was totally empty when we were there. Not a soul there. When I was there the previous time, it was packed. And the floor is actually a false floor, and the real floor is underneath and still has the original mosaic from Constantine's time. So this is a very ancient church. And of course, being a holy place, it is filled with mythologies and histories that probably never took place. But it was interesting to me, the sunbeam that came in to this church while I was there. And there, up against the one pillar, you have these holes over here. Can you see them? And what are these holes? Well, the legend goes that Mary appeared in the church one day, and then she took her fingers and made them in the shape of a cross like this, and she went up against the pillar and went, and there were the holes. There they were. Those are Mary's fingers that made the holes. And if you put your fingers into the holes, they say you receive a special blessing. Now, as I looked at those holes, I saw that the edges were pretty much chipped and what have you. I think it was a very poor drill job that they did over there. If it really was divine, they would have been burnt in there very neatly. So this is a type of story that attracts the people, and you will be amazed how in normal times they line up in long queues and put their fingers in there and really believe that they will receive a special blessing from Mary if they put their fingers into there. Now, the church, of course, previously had been lower. I showed you that the lower floor that was covered by the boards was considerably lower than the present floor. So if you want to go down to the original place where they claim the crib of Jesus stood, you have to go down these steps and you enter into the sepulchre, and there it is. And this is where apparently the crib stood, on that very spot over there. So if you put your hand over there, you can get this day still an absolution from the Roman Catholic Church. That means all your sins are forgiven by just going poop, touching that spot. And in fact, in some of these spots, you can have your sins forgiven 90 days in advance. So if you're planning the mother of all parties, it's good to go and put your hand there, you know, and for 3 months you can just hang loose. That's pretty neat. And no questions asked, no penalties forthcoming from heaven. Now, we were there at a time when there was no one there, which was surprising. So when we actually did arrive there, nobody should have been there. These people were very, very surprised. They were busy with their normal rituals, and we sort of interrupted this ritual, which did not particularly please them. But we had a camera there, and I took pictures with my camera. Should have seen the looks. I'll show you one just now that we got. And this is now an Orthodox Mass in the basement, in the cellar of this church, where normally one should not be. Here they are. This is how they were dressed, in black hoods. They look more like members of the Ku Klux Klan than they do like monks. These are Orthodox monks saying a particular Mass. And here is sort of what transpired. Is there sound? This man's very angry with us for photographing this. Now that man over there, I think if looks could kill, I would have been gone. He doesn't look too friendly, huh? So this is the type of ritual that goes on. I don't know what type of mass that was, but interesting nevertheless. And then when the Orthodox people leave, then the Roman Catholics come in and they do their thing. Here is a group of pilgrims in a Roman Catholic setting. There's one lady over there. She's got 3 crosses in front of her, and her face is covered. And it's a good place, they say, to come if you want to be totally cleansed of whatever your problem is. Outside this church, they have Hieronymus' statue, writing over there scriptures. They have the skull down there. This is also occult, of course, the question of death and life and cycles of death and life. And going down into the basement of the church, we find this cave. Now, apparently, this is the cave, so they say, where Mary actually gave birth. But you'll also notice the triple arches, which are typical of paganism. And so whether this is so or whether this was a pagan site, I cannot tell. Also in the basement of this church, you will find the skulls of what they say are the skulls of the babies that Herod had killed. I don't particularly believe that either, but that is what they say. And down there, that's one of them that I photographed down there. On one occasion, while I was there, a bomb exploded in a place where I'd just been a few seconds previously. So, quite a dangerous place. Here's another cave, and in this cave there's also a Marian shrine, and they claim that this is where Mary nursed her infant. Why the places should be different, I don't know. The one where she was born, and they even have the cave where Joseph waited while Mary was giving birth in the other room. So, very interesting. When you come to this one, this is called the Milk Shrine. And when you enter that, it's called Milk Grotto, La Grotto du Lait. And inside you go, it's another cave, church built into a cave, another pagan symbol over there. And up against the walls, you have these white splotches. And these are certified by Rome with certification from the papacy that is the milk of Mary that squirted against the walls when she, yes, this is serious stuff, when she was nursing Jesus. So the guide who was there was very excited about showing us this, and you can receive special unction. There's the certificate of approval from the Vatican saying that these are genuine milk splotches of Mary. So I said to the guide, you know, I've been in the other caves as well, and there are similar white splotches against the walls. These are calcium carbonate deposits from rain. He says, yes, in the other caves, but not this one. This is milk. This is milk. This is the famous Milk Grotto. And if you go down, they have all these little sub-caves, and there you can see this typical icon in one of them. Now, this is actually paganism. This is the Isis legend. You see, in the Isis legend, Mary takes the place of Isis. And Isis was also the queen of fertility. After all, she managed to bear Horus while her husband was dead by reconstructing him. And so if people had fertility problems, they would particularly pray to Isis. And that would solve their fertility problems. If they had nursing problems, then they would pray to Isis, and then the milk would flow. This is ancient paganism resurrected in modern Christianity in these places. Jesus, of course, survived the slaughter of Herod, and the family went down to Egypt, so the Bible tells us. And they spent some time in Egypt, and then in time again for the boy to obtain his manhood, as it is the custom in Israel, returned from Egypt, and they lived in Nazareth.
To see this entire video, please contact amazingdiscoveries.org or by phone at 1-866-572-9457 or by fax at 604-599-9949. Our Canadian address is P.O. Box 189, 7101C, 120th Street, Delta, British Columbia, V4E 2A9. Our U.S. address is P.O. Box 4480, Blaine, Washington, 98231.